What if you could walk into your garden, pick a fern-like leaf, and use it to slash your household sugar consumption by half? Imagine a plant so naturally potent that when you cook it with tart fruits like rhubarb or gooseberries, it chemically neutralizes the acidity and tricks your tongue into tasting sweetness without the need for a mountain of refined white powder. This is not a modern biotech invention or a lab-created sweetener. It is a humble perennial herb that has been growing in the cool shadows of Europe for thousands of years. For centuries, this plant was the backbone of the physic garden. It was the secret weapon of frugal housewives and monks who relied on its oils to make sour wild foods palatable long before the age of global shipping and cheap cane sugar. It offers a flavor profile that is clean, aromatic, and distinct, a taste that defined the pre-industrial palate. Yet if you mention its name to a modern chef or a commercial farmer, you will likely be met with a blank stare. This is the story of Sweet Cicely, Myrrhis odorata, the sugar saver that vanished from our kitchens exactly when we needed it most. We did not lose this plant because it failed us. We lost it because of our addiction to processed convenience. Welcome to Ancestral Yields. If you believe that the best solutions to our modern dietary crises are buried in the soil of the past, please like this video and subscribe. To understand the power of Sweet Cicely, we must step back into the world that relied upon it. Its botanical name, Myrrhis, comes from the Greek word for perfume, linking it to the biblical myrrh and suggesting a fragrance that was once called divine. In the medieval period, the monastery was not only a place of worship, it was the primary agricultural research center of Europe. The monks, who kept strict Lenten fasts, needed foods that were sustaining, medicinal, and uplifting. Sweet Cicely was a Charterhouse staple. Every part of the plant was used in a closed-loop culinary system. The large taproot was boiled and eaten as a vegetable, and contemporaries said it had a flavor profile superior to the parsnip. The fern-like leaves were used as a potherb to dress salads. But it was the seeds that held a special place in history. As the plant matures, it produces large, ridged seeds that taste like licorice candy. In an era before toothbrushes or mints, monks and laborers carried these seeds as a natural breath freshener and as a mild stimulant to stave off hunger during long hours of labor. By the time of the Renaissance, the plant had moved from the cloister to the cottage. John Gerard, in his famous Herbal or General History of Plants, published in 1597, lauded the plant with a specific, almost geriatric recommendation. He wrote that the roots and leaves were exceeding good for old people that are dull and brayed. In the medical language of the 16th century, this meant the plant was viewed as a cognitive, vitalizing tonic, a superfood for the elderly that lifted the fog of age and lifted the spirit. It was believed to be so preserving of the human constitution that during the Great Plague of London in 1665, households would scrub their floors with Sweet Cicely and eat the seeds daily, believing the aromatic oils created a shield against the miasma of disease. While germ theory has updated our understanding, the antiseptic properties of anethole suggest our ancestors were not entirely wrong. If Sweet Cicely was so useful, why isn't it more widely utilized today? The disappearance of Sweet Cicely from the Western diet was not an accident. It was an economic casualty of the 19th century. For most of human history, sweetness was a rare luxury derived from honey, fruits, or plants like Sweet Cicely. But in the mid-19th century, the world changed. The Industrial Revolution didn't just bring steam engines, it brought the mechanization of sweetness. Two major historical factors conspired to erase herbal sweeteners. First, The expansion of colonial sugar plantations in the West Indies flooded the market with cane sugar. Second, and perhaps more significantly, the Napoleonic Wars accelerated the development of the sugar beet. When the British Navy blockaded French ports, cutting off cane sugar supplies, Napoleon subsidized the extraction of sugar from beets. By the late 19th century, the invention of the vacuum pan and the industrial centrifuge allowed refiners to produce white sugar at a scale previously unimaginable. According to historical economic data, the price of sugar plummeted by over 70% in a few decades during the 19th century. Suddenly, sweetness was cheap, shelf-stable, and infinitely shippable. The Victorian palate was systematically retrained. The complex, herbal, licorice-tinged sweetness of Sweet Cicely was viewed as rustic and improper compared to the neutral, pure sweetness of refined white sugar. Culinary schools began to favor the standardized white powder because it offered consistent results in baking and jams, unlike the variable flavors of fresh herbs. As the price of sugar hit rock bottom, the need for a sugar saver in the garden evaporated. Why spend time cultivating a shade-loving herb to reduce the tartness of your rhubarb when you could just dump a pound of cheap sugar into the pot? We traded a perennial, zero-calorie flavor modifier for a refined carbohydrate that would go on to fuel a global metabolic health crisis. Unlike stevia, which can have a bitter metallic aftertaste, or sugar, which triggers a rapid insulin spike, Sweet Cicely operates by a different mechanism. The magic lies in a volatile organic compound named trans-anethole. This is the same aromatic benzene derivative found in anise, fennel, and star anise. But in Sweet Cicely, it is delivered in a uniquely delicate leafy matrix. Research published in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology confirms that the essential oil of Sweet Cicely is primarily composed of this anethole, often constituting over 80% of the plant's volatile oil profile. When this compound hits the human palate, it is perceived as intensely sweet. Chemical analysis rates anethole as roughly 13 times sweeter than sucrose by weight, but without the caloric load. It acts as a biological flavor modifier. When stewed with acidic compounds, anethole binds to taste receptors in a way that masks the sharpness of acids, allowing you to reduce the added sugar in a recipe by 50% to 75%, while maintaining the same perceived sweetness level. But the benefits extend far beyond the palate. While refined sugar is an anti-nutrient that depletes the body of minerals during digestion, Sweet Cicely is a nutrient-dense botanical. It acts as a delivery system for potent antioxidants. Studies have isolated significant concentrations of flavonoids, specifically quercetin and camphorol, within the leaves. To put this in perspective, 100 grams, roughly 3.5 ounces, of fresh Sweet Cicely provides a concentrated flavonoid profile that rivals medicinal teas, far outstripping the trace amounts found in standard salad greens like iceberg lettuce, which is 96% water. Furthermore, unlike empty carbohydrates, Sweet Cicely functions as a carminative. In the days before refrigeration, when diets were heavy on preserved meats, pulses, and cabbages, digestive distress was a constant companion. The oils in Myrrhis odorata relax the smooth muscles of the digestive tract, preventing the gas and bloating that modern sugar alcohols often cause. It is a bio-antifreeze for the body and the garden alike, retaining its essential oils and vitamin C content even under the snow. However, nature demands respect. Because Sweet Cicely contains high levels of anethole, which has a mild estrogenic effect and acts as a uterine stimulant, it is historically contraindicated for pregnant women. Additionally, because it belongs to the Apiaceae family, those with severe allergies to celery or fennel should avoid it. For the general population, however, it represents a safe, nutrient-dense alternative to the inflammatory cycle of refined sugar. Always consult a medical professional before adding any medicinal herbs or plants to your diet. The contents of this video are for entertainment and informational purposes only and do not constitute professional medical advice. So, if Sweet Cicely is so miraculous, medicinal, delicious, and perennial, why can't you find it at your local garden center next to the basil and cilantro? The answer lies in its stubborn, wild nature. Sweet Cicely requires a process called by cold stratification to germinate. If you buy a packet of seeds in the spring and plant them in warm potting soil, absolutely nothing will happen. The seed demands to experience a simulated winter, at least 3 to 5 months of freezing, moist conditions before it feels safe enough to sprout. This makes it commercially non-viable for big box stores that rely on fast turnover. To grow it, you have to sow the seeds in the fall, mark the spot, and let the snow bury them. Only then, when the earth thaws in spring, will the seedlings emerge. If it doesn't get cold enough where you live, consider storing the seeds in a sealed bag of moist sand or vermiculite at the back of your refrigerator. This artificial winter needs to last for at least 12 weeks to break the dormancy lock. Check the bag periodically, and once you see tiny white root tips emerging, carefully transplant them into pots filled with rich, loamy soil. When selecting a permanent home for your seedlings, remember that Sweet Cicely is an understory plant. It craves the conditions of a damp forest floor. Prepare your planting site with plenty of compost and leaf mold to retain moisture, and ensure the location receives almost total shade, especially in the afternoon. Keep the soil consistently moist, never letting it dry out completely, as the delicate fern-like leaves will scorch and wither in drought. Once established, try not to disturb it. Sweet Cicely puts down a substantial taproot that resents transplanting. A single taproot can live for 20 years, regenerating every spring with zero effort. However, a critical word of caution is necessary for the forager. Sweet Cicely belongs to the Apiaceae family, the same family as carrots and parsley, but also the same family as the deadly poison hemlock, Conium maculatum. To the untrained eye, the fern-like leaves look similar, and mistaking them can be fatal. To distinguish them, you must rely on 3 key sensory checks. First, trust your nose. Sweet Cicely smells unmistakably of anise, licorice, and sugar. Poison hemlock smells musty and disagreeable, like damp mice or old urine. Second, examine the stems. Poison hemlock has smooth, hairless stems often spotted with purple blotches, historically called the blood of Socrates. In contrast, Sweet Cicely stems are usually solid green, sometimes reddish at the base, but not spotted, and are covered in fine, velvety white hairs. Finally, check the seeds. Sweet Cicely seeds are large, nearly an inch long, deep black and shiny when ripe. Hemlock seeds are tiny and gray-brown. Never forage in roadside ditches where herbicides are sprayed, and never eat a plant unless you are 100% certain of its identity. The safest path is to buy certified seeds from specialized nurseries, like the Plant Good Seed Company or Strictly Medicinal Seeds, and to establish your own safe colony at home. The key to using this herb is understanding its volatile nature. The essential oils are delicate. If you boil the leaves for an hour, the flavor will volatilize and vanish. This is the so-called turpentine effect some old cookbooks warn about, where overcooking leaves a woody, resinous taste instead of sweetness. The trick is to use it as a finishing herb or a gentle infusion. When making a tart fruit crumble or a compote with rhubarb, apples, or currants, chop the fresh leaves finely and add them toward the end of the cooking process, or layer them in the baking dish. The unripe green seeds are the hidden gem for the gardener, In late spring, before they harden and turn black, these seeds are tender and explode with sweetness. They can be chopped into fruit salads, used as a garnish on ice cream, or simply eaten straight from the plant as gardener's candy. They offer a zero-calorie hit of satisfaction that cleanses the palate. The story of Sweet Cicely is a reminder that we have options. We are not beholden to the cornfields of the Midwest or the sugarcane plantations of the tropics for our sense of pleasure. We traded a perennial, health-giving herb for a refined, inflammatory chemical because that chemical was easier to package, tax, and ship. It is time to stop buying the silence of the supermarket and start growing the sweet myrrh of our ancestors. If you are ready to reclaim the lost flavors of the earth, give this video a like and subscribe to Ancestral Yields. See you in the garden.